Do we start now?
Just started recording. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Alex, for joining us and your willingness to support our students in this unprecedented time. So we really appreciate your solidarity and support for our students. So everyone, today we have Alex Garcia, who's joining us all the way from Sydney, Australia. Thank you so much for making the time for our students, Alex. I know it is late afternoon. I was early evening in Australia, but you were keen on helping our students and
very keen,
supporting them. We really appreciate it. Thank you. And we've been really keen on having you. So thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. So here I'm to talk about functional grammar. And from what I hear, the concept may be new to you. So I would like you to start telling me, you can either use your microphone or put in the chat, what is grammar for you? What ideas do you associate with grammar? And if you have heard anything about functional grammar. So George was telling me that she didn't study grammar at school and it's a bit afraid of grammar.
That is absolutely true. It feels very alien to me, yeah. So I'm very glad for this.
It's related to syntax, yes. Anything else? How a sentence is structured, that's part of it, yes. Do you like grammar? How do you feel about grammar? You're like, oh, grammar? Or some people, I mean, if you study languages, you are very likely to, maybe you did well with grammar at school and you were able to identify subject, verb, and object. Let's see. We have two. No one else? Okay, so has anyone heard about functional grammar? Is it completely new? Is it a completely new concept to everyone? Use a language, either spoken or written, effectively in the correct structure the native speaker uses. Okay, so we're going to expand on that concept. It's new, so the concept of functional grammar is new. Hopefully it will be something that will fascinate you the same way it fascinated me, and maybe you'll do a PhD with me one day at some point in some study of functional grammar. Okay, so let's begin. I'm very inductive, so I show people and I try to take them, and then at the end, hopefully you'll see where I'm going. So if you think, what is she talking about? I'm trying to get to a point, but I show before I tell. So imagine you are at a library and there's some people making noise. How would you say that in words? So here we're using non-linguistic meaning. So it is semiotic because it has to do, it creates meaning. You understand when people do this. But how would you say that in words? You can put it in the chat. Yes, Ala? How would you say that? I'll repeat. How would you say that in words? Ala? Probably not. Okay, not sure if they're... Okay, here are some of the options. Could you keep quiet, please? Yes, okay. So that's something that I have here. So you could say something like, could you please be quiet? You could say, shut up. You could say something like, this is silent area. Or you could say something like, be quiet. Of the many possibilities that you could say. What is the most, from those four, what is the most polite way to say it?
I think, could you please be quiet? Maybe.
You think, could you please be quiet, Farah?
Yes.
Anybody think something different? Or does everybody agree? Everybody agrees? Stay quiet, we're in the library. That would be the most polite way to say it? Or that's from the previous answer? Okay, yes.
Yes, we are agreeing.
Okay, you agree with could you please be quiet?
Yes.
Okay, here's my idea. I think, in my opinion, that this is a silent area is the most polite way to say it. And how are those expressions different? They all want the same thing. They all want the group of students who's being noisy to be quiet. But let's look at the grammar of these expressions. So when you say shut up, it's an imperative. Remember, so you give an order, you give a command, that's the imperative form. Go, run, those are imperatives. So it's a command. And shut up is a doing process. So you have to move your mouth to shut up. You have to move matter, and that's why it's called a material process. Be quiet is also an imperative. You're also given a command, but it's a being process. So you don't have to do anything, you have to be something, and it's temporary. Now, when you say, could you please be quiet, you're not giving commands. You're asking a question. It's an interrogative. And on top of that, you say could. That makes it more polite because it's a modal. But you're making you the subject. So I'm asking, could you please be quiet? That is, I don't know if you study the speech acts about Searle, face-threatening acts, when you study politeness. At some point, if you're studying language, you'll study politeness and you'll talk about the speech acts and face-threatening acts, face-threatening acts. That is those things that you say that make the person feel somehow embarrassed. So when you say, could you please be quiet, I'm making you the subject. So that's more face-threatening than what I think this is silent area. When I say this is silent area, I'm not asking you to do anything. It's not a question, it's not a command, and you are not a part of the sentence. I'm just making a statement saying this is silent area. Of course, your tone of voice, your body language can make one or the other be more aggressive, but all things equal, I think this is silent area is more polite because it doesn't make you the subject of the sentence. The question is now, do they mean the same? Do you think they mean the same?
I think yes, all of them mean the same. They imply the need for a quiet place. So yeah, you have to be quiet because we are in the library. But the tone, the gestures, as you said, it differs.
Yes, you have on spot. So if we say they mean the same, that means that they could be used in any context, right? So if they mean the same, I could use any of those expressions anytime that I want someone to be quiet. But of course, you can't, right? Now, meaning it, so they can be appropriate depending on the context. So if it's a group of friends and you know them, they're very close to you, but you can say, shut up, mate, we're gonna get kicked out again. So in that case, shut up, that would be appropriate. But if there are other people, so you are a student and there are other students and you don't know them, you say, hey guys, I'm trying to finish an assignment. Could you please be quiet? Could you please keep it down? So you don't know the person, but you're both students. Now, if you're a librarian, you're trying to impose order at the library, but you don't want to be rude either. You say, excuse me, gentlemen, this is a silent area. If you'd like to continue your conversation, you can book a private room, for example. Or if it's just a sign that is put on the wall, you're not going to write all of that. You say, library, quiet, please. Okay. So meaning is context dependent, but it also involves more than just what we want people to do. What we want people to do are somebody said in the chat, your target, your goal is the same, but that is only one aspect of meaning. Because meaning is more, we create meaning in a society. We are a group of people, and politeness and all these things was developed because we started living in groups. And in order to live in a group, you need to be nice, because if people don't like you, imagine hundreds of thousands of years ago, groups of about 100 people roaming together, finding food, hunting and gathering. If somebody was not nice, they would kick them out of the group and this person would die because humans cannot survive alone in the wilderness. So we develop language and we develop politeness to make sure that we stay in the group and we don't get kicked out. So meaning is a lot more than just our target, our goal. So this is the concept of functional linguistics, and they conceive the architecture of language in the way I'm going to explain it now. So imagine everything that we say it in a context. And what we say is the content. And there is an expression plane, which is how we say it. So for example, the content is, okay, I want these people to be quiet. The context is the library, but it's also who's talking to whom. Is it a librarian to a student? Is it a friend to a friend? Is it a student to another student that they don't know? And the expression is the tone of voice, the pronunciation, or if it's written, the signage, okay? So those are the three main levels. Context that is outside of language, content is inside of language, and expression, what comes out. Now, if we look at this in more detail, context is divided into two aspects. So there is a context of culture, because the way we do things in Australia are not the same way we do things in the UK or in Colombia or in Gaza or in the United States. So every culture does things differently. For example, I was fascinated to read that in Germany, for example, if you make a mistake, the way to give you feedback is to make you really feel bad about your mistake. It's saying you really did wrong. You shouldn't do it. If you do that again, you can get fired. And that is something that for example, in the Australian context, that's not something you would do. That's something that you would try to diminish, and I'll explain that in a bit. So there is a context of culture, the way a society does things, but there's also the context of situation. And that is a concept developed by Halliday and Hassan, which are the parents of functional linguistics. And they classify the elements of their context of situation as three elements: field, tenor, and mode. And field refers to what is going on. What is your goal with the communication? So for example, we want those people to be quiet. And you were right to say, yes, that was the same in all those situations, in all those wording, the goal was the same, getting the people to be quiet. But it differed on the tenor, like who's talking to whom. Do they know each other? So social distance is one aspect. Is one the boss of another? Is it hierarchical status? Like is the boss to employee, or is it a parent to child? Is it lecturer to student? And the mode is how does the communication take place? Is it through the speakers of the library? Is it in person at close distance, or is it a sign? Is it written on a board? So all those different things affect how we express things. And therefore, the content is divided into also two levels. The semantics, that is a name for what we call the different configurations of field, tenor, and mode, create different text types. So for example, in a recipe, the field is instructions to prepare food. Who's talking to whom? An unknown author, or maybe a famous author, Jamie Oliver or someone like that, and is telling you how to prepare something. And the mode could be written, could be on a book, could be on a website, could be on a video. So depending on those, there will be different text types. And the next level that will be affected by that is what we call lexicogrammar. So when you talk about syntax, which is cognitive linguistics mostly, you think about grammar independently. So noun groups and syntax. But in functional grammar, we think about the lexicogrammar, because when we change one word, we change the grammar of the word. So think about when you are using reporting verbs. If you say describe it will be different than when you say argue. So one will need a clause and one will need a noun group. So in the same way, every time you change a word, you change the grammar of the word. So you say, I'm eating bread, or I'm eating a slice of bread, or I'm eating a sandwich. So just by changing that, you have to change the grammar of the sentence. Now, it is expressed in phonology, as I said, intonation, or graphology, written expression. Does it look too complicated up to now? Are there any questions up to here? Is there anything that is not clear? All clear, okay. So let's do a bit of text analysis based on this sign that I found very interesting. So quiet study room, enjoy peace, quiet and solitude. Peace, quiet, tranquility and solitude while you study, read, think and write. Please turn off cell phones, laptops and other electronics. So what do you think is the context of culture? Where do you think this text comes from? Where do you think in what culture could this text happen? Maybe it's hard for some people to type. So it could be in any university library, in an English-speaking country, in a classroom library, or an institution where English is the medium of instruction. Yes. Now let's look at the context of situation. So if we look at the field, remember, it's what we want to achieve, what's going on. So it's advising students to be quiet. If we look at the tenor, is who's talking to whom. The library administration is talking to the students. The mode is written. It's a sign. So the space is limited. It would be different if it were an email. So let's say that the administration say, read an email to all the students saying, please, there have been incidents of too much noise in the library, so we require you to be quiet, blah, blah, blah. So an email, even though it's written, would be completely different to that sign. If we look at the semantics, is what kind of text it is. It's a library sign. Okay. Now let's look deeper into the grammar. Okay. So I've put in there, and I may use some language that you may not know, and I'll try to explain. So the first one is quiet study room. Is there a verb there?
No.
No, there are no. Thank you. There are no verbs, so that is called a noun group. Okay. Now it says enjoy peace, tranquility, and solitude. So we have a verb there that is enjoy. So that is called a clause. If we have a verb, we have a clause. And there we have a verbal group, and in functional grammar, we classify verbs depending on what they are doing. So enjoying is something that we do with our minds. So we call that a mental process. And what do we enjoy? Peace, tranquility, and solitude. That's also a noun group. And we call that we enjoy, we call it a phenomenon. You don't have to memorize this. It's just to give you an idea of the different types of analysis that we can do. Now, part of the tenor and the who is also our feelings and our judgments about situations. So if I say enjoy peace, tranquility, and solitude, what feeling does it give you? It's not the same as saying do not speak. If you speak in the library, you'll have to get out. So this is a very positive take on a library sign that is telling you to be quiet. So instead of telling you be quiet, no speaking, no talking, it's telling you enjoy peace, tranquility, and solitude. That is called positive affect. And if you want to read more about that, that is the appraisal system of Martin and White, if you ever interested in that. Now the next sentence is, while you study, read, think, and write. Who is the subject there? Remember we talk about the subjects? You, exactly. So I'm making you the subject here, and of the subject of a verbal group that have mental and material processes that are study, read, think, and write. A kind invitation rather than an imperative tone. Exactly. So I'm using positive mental processes, and I'm using, those are the things that you do at the library. You come to the library to study, read, think, and write. So I'm choosing, instead of saying no talking, shut up, be quiet, I'm telling you, enjoy the piece while you read and write. Now, the next one is telling you, please. Please is an adjunct. Turn off is a material process, but what is the object of that material process? Cell phones, laptops, and other electronics. It's not you. So an adjunct is a word that is not a participant, it's not a process, so it's not a verb, it's not a noun, and it's not a circumstance. So please doesn't have that kind of, it's like the word, it's something that we add. So what this adjunct is telling us is politeness. We say please doesn't mean anything except that we're being nice. That's all that please means. Okay? So notice that even though we have an imperative here, the object of that imperative is the phones, the laptops, and electronics. It's not you shut up. Okay? So you are not the object. You are not the one who has to be quiet. You just have to turn off the cell phones and the laptops. So this, and I found this sign very interesting because it didn't take that prescriptive, rude approach of be quiet, no talking, no phones permitted. It's more friendly. So the grammar of that sign is creating a more positive message for the students. Okay. Now, let's go. So this is what we call for our analysis a socio-semiotic approach. Socio obviously means social, and semiotics means meaning, which means that we consider meaning with their social aspect. So what effect does it have on society? So this is a repetition of those circles that I had at the beginning. So we have feel, tenor, and mode, the what, the who, and the how, creating those configurations depending on who says what to whom and how. We have different text types. And that is reflected or realized in the lexical grammar. And that creates ideational meanings, which refer to what is happening. So yes, there were similar ideational meanings in the sense that, yes, you wanted people to be quiet, but there were different interpersonal meanings. So in shut up, you're either reflecting authority, like I have the authority to tell you to shut up, or I'm reflecting closeness because you're my buddy, like, hey, shut up, and that's okay. So either those two. The textual meanings are how we organize the message. So it's different if I organize it in a sign, and it's different as if I'm talking, or it's different if I'm writing an email. So we will organize it in different ways depending on how the text looks. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Okay. Okay. So the ideation meanings are how we construe experience, and this construe is like how we create an idea of the world. So what the things that we live, the things that we experience in our minds are outside, how we build it in words. The interpersonal is how we relate to each other and how we negotiate meanings. And the textual are how we organize the message. Okay. So what is grammar? So grammar is a system of choices to create meaning. So it's not just about correctness. It's not just about accuracy. It's not about spelling mistakes or correct tense of the verb. It's about every time we speak, we're making choices. Sometimes those choices are automatic. So for example, when I live in Colombia, in the city where I live, people are very informal. And when we buy things, we say, 2 bars of soap, for example. But in Australia, you wouldn't even say, could you give me a bar of soap? You would say, can I have when I say can I have, I'm not making you the subject. So that is a pattern that Australian people sometimes don't realize why they say can I have instead of could you give me. But when you say can I have, I'm not making the other person the subject. So those are systems of politeness that culturally are established and people learn and repeat them without much thought. But when you're writing academic texts, you have to think a lot about what you say and what you write. So I gave you an example about the difference in grammar and the different meanings that grammar creates that are of an everyday topic. So what I'm going to do next is show you how those things can be applied to academic writing. Any questions or any comments up to here? No. Okay. So we're going to start with the ideational meanings. So those are the ones that allow us to construe the world in language, to express what we see and what we feel and what we hear in words, which is never a perfect picture, an exact picture of what actually happens. It's always an interpretation of us. And the logical meanings, which are about how we relate ideas to each other. We may say things, but some things are more important than others, okay? So for example, if you have a significant other and if you say, I love you, but our parents don't want us to be together. Are you breaking up with them or are you saying that you're going to continue with them? Is the relationship going to end or is the relationship going to stop? I love you, but our parents don't want us to be together. To end. But if I say, our parents don't want us to be together, but I love you, the relation is going to continue. So exactly the same information, but just the order where you put it makes one idea more important than the other. We're going to see that in a minute. Okay? Now, so let's start with the experiential meanings, are more about how we say things that happen either inside of us or outside of us. So yes, exactly. That's the whole point of this, is how you construct the words you choose, the grammar you choose has different meanings and creates different meanings. That is the whole point of this. And functional grammar gives us the elements to understand why when we say things one way, they mean something, and when you say it other way, they mean something different. So when we're thinking about experiential meanings, we think about who are the participants, who's taking part. And those participants can be people, but they can also be actions. They can also be abstract entities. Processes are what we normally call verbs. So what are the doings, the happenings, and the beings in what we're talking about? And an optional element are the circumstances, the when, the where, the how, the from what perspective. And I'm going to show you some examples. Okay. So we're going to look at who's doing what, and you're going to show me the difference in these sentences. So we can say frequent flyers are polluting the atmosphere. So the participants are frequent flyers. The atmosphere is also a participant. I just didn't highlight it not to overwhelm you with the colors. And polluting is a process, okay? A material process. You could also say Taylor Swift is polluting the atmosphere with her frequent flights. With her frequent flights is a circumstance. And those circumstances are expressed usually with George prepositional phrases. So this with is a preposition, okay? Circumstances, they add meaning to the clause by saying at or when or with or by or for, okay? You could say flying frequently pollutes the atmosphere. And notice the difference. Here it's not a person. It's not someone in particular. It's an action. The action of flying frequently pollutes the atmosphere. Or you could say fossil fuel companies pollute the atmosphere. Yes, so polluting is, Haya, what is exactly the question? being adjectives or verbs here?
Yes, Miss. I mean that here, sometimes the polluting here is as a verb, so it pollutes something,
Yes.
or as being as adjective, so it's
It could
something
be
is
an adjective.
polluted.
Yes. Yes. So
Yeah,
in
this
this
is what I
case,
mean.
it is a yes, I get it now. So
Yeah.
in this case, it is a process, a material process, a verbal group. Okay?
So here it
So
changes the whole meaning if I use it as in a way of being a verb or in a way of being adjective, I
yes,
guess.
exactly. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
what the main change with these examples is who or what I'm choosing as the main participant. The participant that is doing the action in a material process, it's called the actor. Okay? So here it's frequent flyers. It's a generic term for a lot of people. In the second one, it's Taylor Swift. In the third one, it's an action. It's not even a person. It's flying frequently. In the last one is fossil fuel companies. That is an entity, but it's not a person, but it's still a concrete entity. So you see how the same idea, who are we blaming in each for this case of polluting the atmosphere? In the first one is the users, the people who fly. In the second one is specifically Taylor Swift. In the third one, we are not blaming any person. We are just doing the action of flying. So people can say, it's not me, it's just the action of flying frequently. And in the last one, we are assigning responsibility to the fossil fuel companies. Okay? So you see how the same action can be construed differently depending on which participants we choose. Does that make sense?
Yes, sure, but I sometimes you feel that it make it's a fun, but sometimes it makes ambiguity to the listener or the person
Yes.
who gets this sentences. So sometimes you enjoy and have to think about it, or sometimes you feel no, I'm confused about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes the intention is to be ambiguous. Sometimes you don't want people to know. For
Yeah.
example, if I say it has been decided that your contract has been terminated, who has decided it? It has been decided. Who decided it? I don't know. Okay? So that's my point. That what the speaker avoid to choose has a powerful meaning as much as the choice they made. Exactly. So every time you speak or write, you're making choices. Some of those choices are automatic, like how are you doing? Can I have something? Because you do it, you repeat them all the time. But some are really calculated. Riwa, you have a question?
Hi. Hi, Miss
Yes.
Alex.
Yeah. Yes.
I want to comment about this information.
Yeah.
Just a second.
Mm-hmm.
Just a second. The earphone fault. I want to comment on this. This technique is usually used in the news.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It is used in the news and
Yes.
especially the political news
Yes.
when they mention when they want to tell who accused or who did the crime
Mm-hmm. Yes.
as it's going here in Gaza Strip. Some channels they are decided to the other side, so they express the news with this way
Exactly.
to add the ambiguity to the one who did that incident. You know.
Yes. Yes, you are absolutely right. I didn't want to bring politics into it, but you got it. You absolutely got it. Yes. Okay. So let's see how we apply this into academic writing. So let's look at the participants that are the authors. So you know that when you are writing academic text, you need to integrate sources. So for example, you say, in the first one, we have Blower and Blower, 2004. What role are the authors playing in this sentence? Are they a participant? Not really. They are in brackets at the end. They are not part of the sentence. Okay? So they're just added there for reference, but they are not part of the sentence. Now, in the second one, the Oliveira and Smith have confirmed this tendency. The authors are the main doers of the sentence. So in this case, we call them sayers because confirming is a verbal process. So they are the subjects of the sentence. According to Liu and Nelson, then they are a circumstance. They say, according to them, this is what happens. So they are a circumstance in this sense. So there are different ways in which you can incorporate sources into your writing. And you have to be careful that sometimes the mistake that students make is overusing this form. X people say, this one points out, Smith argues, and every sentence begins with an author. And if you begin every sentence with an author, then you're discussing authors or you're discussing ideas. So you need to balance who you place as participants in the sentence. Okay, so here they are not a participant. Here they are the sayer, the main participant. And here they are a circumstance, according to them. Okay? So this is what I just said. When you're incorporating sources, do you want to make the authors an active participant in the sentence? What is more important, who said it or what they said? You can decide, you can make a decision, and what is the overall effect? Some sentence, you want to highlight the idea. In other sentences, you want to highlight the authors. But if you start every sentence with an author, then your message gets confused because are you discussing authors or are you discussing ideas? Any question? Okay. Now, I'm sure you have heard about active and passive voice. Yes? Okay. So sometimes people take an approach to active and passive voice, very mechanical. Change sentences from active voice to passive and change sentences from passive to active voice. But why are we changing those? And they don't think about the meaning of active and passive voice. So, for example, in method search, if you say data were obtained from the regular teaching and learning practices, blah, blah, so that is passive voice. If you say all the students participated and signed a consent form, that is active voice. And then anonymity and confidentiality were ensured. That is passive voice again. Does anyone have any idea about why we changed from passive to active? Instead of saying a consent form was signed by all the students. Yes, Ruba?
I believe that because we want to shed the light on the action rather than the doer of the action.
But passive voice gives more significance to the object rather than the subject, or maybe we're neglecting the doer, yes. But especially with the students who participated, if you're doing research, has anyone ever done research? If you're doing research where you need human participants, it's better to use the active voice because it gives them what we were saying, what you put as a subject gives a focus. So the same way that you say, if you start every sentence with an author, you're focusing only on authors. Here, when you are referring to human participants, it's better to use active voice in order to respect their agency. Because if you put them as passive, then it's like you're not respecting the fact that they decided to help you with your research and participate in research. So through the grammar, we are not neglecting them. We are highlighting their role. And they say the students participated voluntarily and they sign a consent form. Does that make sense? Okay. So you know about active and passive voice. So this one is passive and this one is active. So both in passive and active voice, there are always two participants. So here the students were recruited by us, the research team, or we recruited the students as active. There are always two participants. But there is a voice. Students enrolled in the program volunteered for the project. So there is only one participant, that is students. Okay? So that is what we call middle voice, when we have only one participant. So think about if you say salaries haven't increased. That is middle voice because it's only the salaries are the participant. But if I say the government hasn't increased the salaries, the government and the salaries are participants. So middle voice is also another way that sometimes you can hide one of the doers of the action or one of the elements of the action. So you need to be careful and decide, is this an action that really involves one participant? Or is it an action that involves actually two or more participants? Okay? It's a question about showing the statistics in active voice. It's not necessarily about showing the statistics, it's about highlighting the person who participated, it's highlighting those participants who volunteer for your project, like giving them a bit of respect. Does that answer your question, Riwa? Okay, so for example, if you're describing methods, you need to think about what role you're assigning human participants. Better to use active or middle voice to put the participants first. In some cases, you may want to use active voice to highlight a decision that you have made as a researcher. And think about what voice you're using and why. So again, it's about making choices and thinking about why you make those choices and what is the effect of those choices. Okay, now we're going into the logical meaning. This is the example of I love you, but our parents don't want us to be together. Let's look at those two sentences. Uptake of renewable energy has increased rapidly. Greenhouse gas emissions are decreasing at a slow pace. So imagine you're writing an essay about climate change. What is going to be your approach to that? Are you going to have a negative outlook, like we're not solving the problem? Or are you going to have a positive outlook saying, yes, there are solutions and we're working towards it? If you only have those two sentences, so let's look at, so they're talking both about climate change, that is a semantic field, and we have the opposite ideas, increased and decreasing, okay? And rapidly and a slow pace. So we have opposite ideas, but they are both about the aspects of climate change, okay? So which idea is more important? You decide which idea is more important. And you can use exactly the same information, and you can go with either a positive outlook or a negative outlook. So how does the grammar express that? So if you say uptake of renewable energy has increased rapidly, that is what we call an independent clause, which is a clause is participants, processes, verbal group, nominal groups that can stand on its own. You can put a full stop at the end. It can be a whole sentence. Greenhouse gas emissions are decreasing at a slow pace. That is another independent clause. So from the logical point of view, the information status is the same. They weigh the same in a way to say it because they're both independent. Now, if I wanted to say that the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions is more important than the uptake of renewables, what I could do is make the idea that is less important a dependent clause. For example, if I say, although uptake of renewable energy has increased rapidly, I cannot put a full stop. That is an incomplete idea. Even the intonation goes up. I cannot put a full stop there. But here, I can. So if you put two ideas in a sentence, and one idea is in a dependent clause, I mean, it cannot be on its own because of the although here. And these ideas, what I'm saying is this idea is more important, and I'm going to focus on the problems that gas emissions are not going down enough, fast enough. So that would be my focus. If I wanted to have a positive outlook, I would do the opposite. Although reductions are slower than expected, the uptake of renewables is increasing rapidly. So I put this in a dependent clause. Although reductions are slower than expected, I cannot put a full stop there. Here, independent clause, the uptake of renewables is increased, so this idea is more important. So what you say is the same idea can be expressed. I can give more importance to one idea or the other depending on the grammar. Any questions or comments? So this will be helpful when you are writing thesis statements. So if you have to write essays, you have to write thesis statements. And when you write a thesis statement, you normally include like a concession, like, although blah, 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 you have a valid, but you want to say that the point is less important. And you need to structure your sentence in a way to show which idea is more important. Does that make sense? Have I lost you? Okay. So I'm not sure if the negative sentence is more important. It gives a sense of urgency. Okay. That's the approach that you want to take. Okay. So you have the same ideas and you decide how you present it. Okay. So I'm not sure we have, but you can do it later maybe. So if you want to say the use of AI, artificial intelligence, is causing cognitive decline in students, some students are using AI to process information more effectively. So depending on what position do you want to take, does anyone want to give it a try? Maybe we need to move a bit faster because we're running out of time. Okay, so we've looked at experiential meanings, ideation meanings, interpersonal meanings at the beginning with the shut up. Now we're going to look at the textual meanings, which is how texts are organized. So we're going to read a bit of a text that starts with this sentence. This is the topic sentence of a paragraph. Fructose and glucose, which are the sugars, the two carbohydrates that make up table sugar. Although fructose has largely been blamed for many of the negative health effects of sugar, it has some useful roles in the body. So notice this, what we were saying before. Although fructose has been blamed for many of the negative health effects, so you say, although fructose is bad, it has some useful roles. So this paper, this text, is it going to be positive or negative about fructose? Considering what we just saw in the previous one about which idea is more important, that fructose has been blamed for the negative effects or that it has some useful roles in the body. Useful or negative?
I think negative. The negative, the first sentence is written as passive to focus on the information itself. So,
But we have the although. Although fructose has been blamed for many of the negative health effects, is that dependent or independent? Is that a complete sentence? Although fructose has largely been blamed for many of the negative health effects of sugar.
although indicates that there is additional information that must be said. Yeah, that it
that
has
is dependent.
Yeah, dependent.
So the idea that I put in the dependent sentence is less important for me than the idea that I put in the independent clause. It has some useful roles in the body. So this text is going to be about how fructose can be good for you. Okay? So the ideas in the dependent clause are less important than the ideas that we put in the independent clause. Okay. So I'm going to show you two paragraphs, and you're going to tell me which paragraph follows best. Okay? So have a read. Okay, was that easy to read? Let me show you this one now. Not so easy, yeah. It wasn't very easy to read. Now read the second one, B. So which one is easier to read? Which one follows better from the second, from the sentence that we have at the top? The second is easier to follow. Now let's see why. So this is the first paragraph. It says fructose and glucose. So we're talking about fructose and glucose. That is in the topic sentence. Remember, the topic sentence needs to have what you're going to talk about in the whole paragraph. But then it starts with our muscles, and then our body, and then but the liver, and then this special metabolism. So it's changing from one thing to the other. Is there a pattern? No, not really. Well, we could say they're parts of the body, but okay. Now, when you read the second one, it says we have fructose and glucose. Most of the glucose ends in our muscles, where this it refers to the glucose. And then, but fructose is mainly metabolized, and then this special metabolism. Is there a pattern? Fructose and glucose, most of the glucose eat fructose. Okay, so those patterns of how we begin sentences, we call them themes, okay? So we have fructose and fructose, eat, glucose, eat. Now, notice that muscles is brought up here, and then muscle, so these are the same. Fructose, eat, glucose, eat, fructose. So there's a pattern there. You know what they're talking about. It's a cohesive paragraph, exactly. Now, muscles is introduced here in the second part of the sentence. After it has been introduced, then it goes back to the top of the clause, but you have already mentioned it. The same thing with fructose is mainly metabolized by the liver. Metabolized is introduced in the second part of the sentence. And then this special metabolism starts in the sentence because you have already mentioned metabolized. So this is what we call the given and the new. The theme is how we begin the sentence. You should always begin your sentences with given information. Okay? New information, you put it in the second part of the sentence of the paragraph. Now, after you have introduced it, then you can bring it up to the first part. When sometimes, so you see the grammar of the first paragraph was fine in the sense that the sentences were complete, there were no problems in punctuation, there were no problems in verbs, and the information is exactly the same. What we have just changed is the order of the information. So when you are writing, think about how you are going to start your sentences. And there should be a pattern. And if you're going to introduce new information, make sure you introduce it in the second part of the sentence. So grammar is more than just correctness and punctuation. It's also about what we put at the beginning of the sentence, where we put in new information, where we put in given information. Okay? The first paragraph was a little chaotic in organizing it. Exactly. You get lost as a reader. Exactly. So sometimes that's what happens when you are reading essays from students, is that they keep starting sentences with things that they haven't mentioned before, and you're like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And probably the grammar is perfect, and Grammarly won't pick up on that if you use Grammarly to correct. So Grammarly won't tell you that you started the sentence with something that you haven't mentioned before. So that's something you need to think about. Those are the choices. Riwa?
I want to say that the next paragraph was precise and focusing on the idea itself that want to be mentioned and highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
So it was precise, but the first one was full of verbs that are put in the paragraph and make it long, but teach verbs which added are not useful. So the next one, the second one, was precise and highlighted the information that wanted to be told.
Yes, exactly. So we are focusing on fructose and glucose, which is the information we want to say. Yes. Okay, so when structuring paragraphs, think about what elements you're placing at the beginning of your sentences. Do the elements follow a pattern? Does the pattern help you focus the paragraph? And are you starting with given information or new information? Okay, so I added some information here, but it's already 8:05. I added it just in case I went too fast. But I think it's a good point. I could make a recording and send you the rest of it if you are interested in that. But I would like to ask if you have any questions so far, or is there anything? Is that something that you would like to learn more about? Did you find this useful? Do you think this is something that you could apply in your writing or?
I could say maybe while people are typing. I found it
Yes,
so
of course.
useful. This was really great.
Uh-huh.
And I felt the way you displayed the information and showed the connections with colors, it really helped a lot, because it's the first time I've learned grammar of any kind like this, and it was really helpful and definitely relevant too. Thank you.
Fruitful. Okay, thank you. So this is we're just scratching the surface, and you're just getting the general ideas of functional grammar. We could have another one later, and I could focus on something else, or the rest. Yes, so we could continue. I can talk to Ahmed, and we can schedule one later. So through analysis. So for example, giving you actually this is a 6-hour course, and I've just started with the beginning. So how, for example, analyzing text. So something that I do with the students is analyze it, and the activity that is later there, but we can leave it for another session. You look at the text the way that you are supposed to write, the academic writing, and we look at the choices that they are making and why they are making those choices, and then you compare it to your own writing, and you see, for example, how are you beginning your sentences? That's something that you need to look at. Are you using active or passive voice? Are you making the scholars? Who are you making participants in your sentences? So it's about text analysis of sources that you want to emulate or imitate. Discourse analysis is part of it. Yes, so discourse analysis, well, the critical discourse analysis uses a lot of functional linguistics, because the discipline is systemic functional linguistics, and systemic is for the systems of choices, okay? For example, verbal processes, you've seen that there are verbal processes and there are material processes. I can explain in detail what are the different types of processes. So discourse analysis uses elements of functional linguistics to explain what they do. Yes. So I'm happy, Ahmed, to schedule another session whenever you find it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex. And I agree with George. You usually grammar, syntax, and all these issues, even semantics. I've taught semantics, pragmatics, and these are sometimes are abstract concepts, are difficult to convey to students. But I really congratulate you, Alex. You've managed to explain those concepts clearly and seamlessly. So thank you so much, and I really enjoyed the session. And I'm sure, yeah. Please.
Okay, I put my email in the chat, and I'm also in LinkedIn. Yeah, so I'll
awesome.
Talk to Ahmed, and we'll focus on more detail and more analysis, so that you learn what a group is and a clause is, and we can do more of the analysis. I just wanted to give you like an overall vision on how it can be applied.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And you've got the email address of Alex. Please feel free to.
Yes, I put it in the chat, and please email me if you have any questions or anything. I would be very, very happy to reply.
We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you again in the near future, Alex. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Take care and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Be safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.